Hello, ladies and gentlemen. How are you guys doing in Milk River? You know, this place, this is funny because when people talk about Milk River, this is where the Kutz Bondongo happened with the first guys, eh? We always remember that. Okay. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for coming. I'm Max. I'll be doing so I'm going to MC this event today. Basically, what we have today is we're going to talk about many things about independence. If you are on the fence, if you don't agree with this subject of independence, we'll welcome your opinion, we'll welcome your questions. If you want to know about other things. And also, by the way, we have some merchandise on the back over there from Chris Scott and some also signs that you can bring. I've seen some signs over there. I got 3 signs today I'm just going to bring to my apartment as well. So I'm going to do my effort to contribute to the war effort, right? You can laugh, that's good. So before getting to the program, I just want to outline some housekeeping rules. We have 2 emergency exits, one on the right side, one on the left by the speakers. There's the main entrance over there. There are 2 washrooms way up there, male and female, obviously. And if you have questions, please keep it questions during the Q&A answer period. We do have, after the speeches, we're going to have a Q&A section on which you can ask the questions and everything. By the way, this show is being live streaming on either Freedom Canada and Freedom, and Chris Scott is also streaming on his end as well. So if you have questions and you pick up the microphone, that will be on the stream. If you're not comfortable with that, there's an option. One of our volunteers, she's going to pass you some papers so you can write the questions, and we're going to ask you on your behalf, so you don't have to talk on the microphone, okay? Also, another point as well is that this is it is an information event as well too. Also another thing in particular is that we have, this is not something that we rent. Those shows cost money and funds to do. Somebody will eventually pass the bucket, just like church. Some comes from expenses. Unfortunately, we're not paid by Donald Trump. What? We're not paid by Donald Trump or Vladimir Putin. Except that I'm waiting to get a payment from, not just kidding. We can laugh, right? No. So basically this whole initiative, like Start Alberta, it's been paid by the grassroots, entirely for the grassroots. So if you want to contribute wherever you want, wherever you're at your heart's content, feel free to do so. Okay? So that being said, I want to introduce the first speaker that is creating an absolute chaos in Tabor right now. Just kidding. I actually got 3 signs for him. I'm going to put in my apartment, so that's good. So Cory Morgan from the Western Standard, an absolute brain when it comes to campaigning and that sort of thing. So we're going to work without further ado. Welcome, Cory Morgan.
Whoa, jeez. Whoa. It's a little phallic. I'll get over it. I'm confident in my sexuality. I am he, him, though, if you wondered about my pronouns, just to get that covered. Apparently that's important these days. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Yeah, I also, I've been writing, for Epic Times for quite some time as a freelancer, and for Rebel with Sheila Gunn Reid with Alberta Fact Check lately. If you're online, you might have seen that new initiative that's been coming up. And when Ezra called me up to get on that, he really had to twist my arm because I got to meet with Sheila at 5:30 in the morning online to come up with our stories to cover the BS that's come out the night before and get on there, and she's nuts. She gets up at like 4. But it's fantastic to work with her, and there's so much to work on, as we already found in this last few weeks of doing that. Such a plethora of misinformation in need of correction. It makes it worth getting up that early and writing those things. It shows where we are in this very unusual time in history and where this kind of battle is. And it's a battle for our hearts and our minds. And unfortunately, some sides won't stop at blatantly spreading misinformation to make their case, or trying to shut down other voices from making their case. As Max alluded to, a lot of people might have heard about some of the fun I've already been having with the town of Tabor. And, I'll just explain. I did start a third-party advertising group. I bought some advertising space with a pretty simple sign. Just said on top, send Ottawa message, showed the Alberta flag, and below it said, choose Alberta. Apparently that was offensive. What kind of person is offended by the Alberta flag? Somebody offended enough to call the town council. And what kind of wimp have they got on town council when they said, let's break the charter and some laws and election laws and demand that this advertisement be taken down? Political cowardice is another problem we have going on in every level of government out here. But on the bright side of that, thanks to them doing that and thanks to me telling them to get stuffed, they now have 3 nice shiny billboards in their town, which are paid until the end of the month. It made national news, and I attribute at least 10,000 of our fundraising for those signs that Max is showing over there to people who saw that on the news and said, I want to contribute to that group to get more of those signs out there. So thank you, Town of Tabor. Keep up the good work, you peckerheads. But, and people have been saying, though, why are you still so stubbornly battling with Tabor, though? There is a lot to be done. We have a referendum facing us this fall, albeit it's not the clear question some people hoped for. It's still an important endeavor. Why are you wasting all this time and money fighting Tabor? Well, a couple of things. People ask, why did I get those signs? Well, actually, it's just because I started that TPA and I didn't have any printed yet, and I just needed somewhere quickly to show a presence, and somebody said, hey, this guy rents billboards. It was as simple as that. Tabor happened to be the town. I didn't target them, though I would have if I had known. So getting these things rolling, getting that response, getting that discussion. The reason I'm continuing on this is because we've got 4 more months of this. We've got different groups with different ideas. Whether Thomas Lukasik wants to believe it or not, I don't know what that weird man believes, but it's important for him that Tabor backs off and loses this battle too, because he's going to want to place ads in different towns. And if a town council in a different town thinks they don't like his messaging and shuts down his advertising, is that better? No, it's not. It's very, very wrong. So that's why I've still been on the town of Tabor like a pit bull on a fat kid, because you can't let these things go. We've got to set the precedent and let the rest of this town know this campaign is going to be in the open for the next 4 months. Both sides are going to have discussions, and Albertans are going to have an informed vote. And that's why these meetings are happening. That's why Chris is holding these and framing it as Let's Talk Alberta. We really do welcome people who are on the fence, people who actually outright oppose this. Every citizen should take part in this. This is a discussion affecting the future of everybody. And if we can't have it openly, we're not going to make the right decision, whatever that may be. I mean, I've certainly got my heart set on a decision, but it doesn't mean we can't have the debate until we get from here to there. In fact, we must. So with this referendum, when people are making their choice, a lot are already saying, well, what does it matter? It's non-binding either way. One side just says we're just going to stay and keep things the way they are, and the second one says, well, we're going to stay and keep things the way we are, but we kind of hope the Premier will move ahead with another referendum after that. It is kind of weak. It's not what a lot of people wanted to see initially. But you got to look at the symbolism of it now. It has turned into a de facto referendum on independence. As far as most citizens are concerned, this is an independence referendum. Even if things won't change the day after, this is where it's being put to the public after 4 months of talk to say, I would like to see this or I would like to see that. So we've got to take it seriously. If we ignore it on either side, the other side will dominate it. So if you've got a strong view with one way or another you want that to go, you've got to stand up and take this campaign seriously. And how do we do that? This is a sensitive subject. This is difficult. A lot of the polls typically show 30%, anywhere 20-30% of people strongly in support of independence. That's where they're sitting. Not much is going to change them from that point of view. That's kind of where I land. I mean, I wrote the Sovereigntist Handbook. It's not been a secret where I stand. 30% of people, strong federalists, nothing's going to change their mind. That's just where they sit, and it doesn't matter. That's fine too. But so you've got 30-40% sitting in a mushy middle that could potentially look at things either way. A lot of those people are basing their case on sentiment and emotion, though. And that's what we've got to work with people. Because you can't dismiss sentiment and emotion with people. It's real. It doesn't matter what reason a person picks on a ballot, this side or that side, whatever their rationale was, because it drove their vote there. So whatever that rationale was, it was real. And if we haven't countered it, we haven't changed their view, they will vote in a way we'd rather they didn't. But when it comes to emotional appeals, when it comes to sentiment, it's not going to be through brochures. It's not going to be through radio ads. It's not going to be through billboards in Tabor. It's going to be through conversations. You know, what's the best person to move you on an issue, to change your mind on something, particularly something sensitive? It's a person you know. It's a face-to-face conversation. And it can take multiple conversations. It can take a number of interactions before somebody kind of moves somebody. But that's what we have to take on. That's what I have a chapter of in my book. It's called Ambassadors for Independence. Because citizens have to take it upon themselves to take on that responsibility to say, I'm going to be the one to change those views and those minds so we can get that vote when the time comes. And to do that, you have to engage with people, whether it's coworkers or at family dinners or, you know, at a soccer game. There's all sorts of opportunities. When you've taken on that responsibility, you're kind of in campaign mode. You're kind of always looking for those opportunities. And you've got to take it seriously. You got to look for those opportunities and also watch that you don't turn into the annoying Amway salesperson of politics and everybody runs away when they see you coming. It is a skill set to sell these things. It doesn't come naturally to a lot of us. A lot of us shy away from sensitive conversations. I mean, hey, for the time being, we're still Canadians, and we tend to be polite. Somebody says, oh, I don't want to talk about that, we'll back off typically, and that's fine. You don't want to get in their face, but no, we do have to start having some of the more serious, complicated conversations with people. And one of the best ways to open that kind of conversation, I find, is something that's counterintuitive to a lot of stubborn gits like me, is asking them Don't tell them, ask them. Ask a person what they're concerned with. Ask them what they would like to see better. Ask them what they think is not being done correctly, or ask them what's being done right. But when they start the conversation with their concerns, your conversation's already going to be better and more interactive. And then you can start leading to some of those different conclusions. Because I think for some of us, we've looked at a whole lot of things, and all roads tend to lead to independence if you talk about them long enough. I'm concerned about crime. So am I. We need to fix things on the judicial level. Yes, we must. How do we do that? Well, we'll open the Constitution. Yeah, okay. That's going to take a while. Or perhaps a new system would address the failing activist judges who do things like let some of the most dangerous of offenders loose among us while locking up a 4'7", 80-pound woman from Medicine Hat without bail for 48 days or whatever it was, and shut down large projects and democratic initiatives on the whim of activist Indigenous leaders and bands. But you see, these discussions can lead there. You work your way towards it because you can't change those judges in our system. It always comes back to the system. And that's what we have to make clear to people too. A lot of people still feel and love Canada, the concept of Canada, the history of Canada. I'll be blunt, I still do too. Canada gave me a lot. I grew up in a peaceful place that was for the most part prosperous and was certainly more democratic than most nations in the world. And I was really lucky I got to do it in Alberta. Some of our best Albertans came here from other parts of Canada or other parts of the world. The case a lot of people make too, Jason Kenney did that in the debate. You know, my grandfather fought in the war for Canada and it's just vile what you guys are doing. No, my grandfather was with Canada when he fought in the war, but he fought for freedom. It just happened to be Canada he was with. And I will value all the way to the grave the sacrifices that all those veterans, not just back in World War I or II or Korea, even recent ones, people in the Middle East, there's people who put a lot on the line in this last 20 years, terribly under-equipped overseas. I appreciate what they've done, and in supporting things like independence, I am not sullying their memory or their efforts. In fact, I'm honoring them and respecting them. I'm taking advantage of the freedoms they've allowed me to have so I can pursue good democratic change. But we need to have those conversations with people who immediately try to shut down the conversation saying they fought for Canada. Well, hang on a second, let's talk a little more about that. And would Canada be gone? Would the history be gone? Would the sentiment be gone the day after an independence vote happened or a year after if a province became independent? No, it wouldn't. The history is still there. You know, Aunt Martha's still in Toronto. That weird cousin in Newfoundland still out there. Don't worry, they're still there. We've just changed the contract. We've changed the border. We've changed the agreement. In the last 100 years, there's been, I don't know how many dozens of new countries have been created. This is not unprecedented, it's not unusual, and it's often a good thing. But we have it trained into us as if the perfect constitution, the perfect nation, the perfect future was built when Canada was founded in 1867, and we dare try to change it, and that's not right. We're not ending Canada, we're evolving. That's another way to look at it. We're moving forward. And that's something we've got to train ourselves a bit towards too, though. Because when we're having those conversations with people, and I'm guilty of it too, we got to be a little more positive. We already know all the negatives. They're there. Don't worry. Mark Carney will remind us of them on a regular basis. Trudeau sure did. Those are there, and we'll see them, and we can certainly keep talking about them. And one of these days I'm going to memorize the quote exactly, but it's a Ayn Rand one that's really good, just talking about no new nation or no revolution has ever happened successfully moving away from something. You have to be moving towards something. So we already know what we're moving away from. Now we got to make the case, though, why would we be better on our own? Why would we be better in leaving? And people, when they ask us that, are asking a very good question. We're humans. We could screw up. It's not impossible. We could vote to become independent and then embrace a system that's even dumber than the one we left. So we better have these conversations now. We'd better have this plan. We better figure out what we want to do, what we're moving toward. People don't want to move toward an unknown. And there's where it gets difficult for us too. because we can't promise things that we don't know. And that's part of the thing in talking to people, to try and win trust, to win their support, to win their heart, win their mind. We're Albertans. We got good BS detectors. If you promise that there'll be nothing but sunny days in July and everybody will be rich and there'll never be crime and the streets will be lined in gold and all of that stuff, they're gonna turn on you. We got to be realistic about things. We got a whole lot of positive things to look forward to and that we can build. But we got to be able to back what we're claiming, and we got to be realistic about some things. People will say, I mean, they're already getting the lineup of economists to talk about the doom and gloom and the horrors that'll happen if Alberta becomes independent. They're greatly exaggerating what will happen if Alberta becomes independent. But I'd be lying to say that we wouldn't have a rough time for that first 6 months, say, after a yes vote. There's going to be some short-term pain for the gain. Companies will at least close the purse strings for a little while until they're certain what's going to happen after such a vote. The Canadian dollar, which we would still have the day after a yes vote, would probably take a dip. I say dip, not dive. It will come back. When we show that we're moving towards something stable, these things will return. But we can't lie to people and say it would immediately be golden, because they won't believe us, because we would be lying. But at the same time, we don't have to listen to those economists spouting mistruths about how it would be the day after as well. Something that's been frustrating has been Premier Smith's behavior lately. And I've been a strong supporter of Premier Smith, and I still am for the most part. I've known her a long time, and I was on the board when she left the Wild Rose. I know she's capable of making mistakes as well as anybody does. I don't expect her to come out in support of independence. That's fine. That wasn't what she was elected to do. But I am getting annoyed with her hyper-campaign against it as well. I think she'd maintained a pretty good balancing act for quite a while, but she sort of fell off her balancing rope way too far on the other side. And she put up that baloney with saying it would cost $400 billion in transitional costs for an independent Alberta. Now, this is a person who I know is very intelligent, a good communicator, and who I do respect. She knew exactly what she was saying because it was a prepared statement, and she broke down some of the things that were in this alleged $400 billion cost. And she knew better, and that's what kind of got me mad. You know, if it's Lukasik, he's an idiot. I don't expect much of him. Smith, on the other hand, is smart. Of that $400 billion, $170 billion, she said, would be debt that we would take on from Canada. Well, that's not a new cost, is it? We've already got it. So that's just BS right off the bat. We have that debt whether we're independent or we stay in Canada. If we become an independent, we might actually have a chance of paying it down, but that's not a new cost. So that's misinformation right off the bat. And then she said we'd be on the hook for $25 billion a year to reach 5% GDP spending on our NATO commitments. Well, Alberta's not a member of NATO to start with. I don't know if we would become one if we became independent. And Canada has just barely gotten to 2% on its commitments, and it's done it by number juggling and finally starting to pay the veterans what they were supposed to get. They didn't actually purchase new military hardware or do things to make Canada exactly a military superpower. And there's more things she broke down in there, but that really, I got to admit, ticked me off. As somebody who's been taking a lot of flack for defending her for quite a while, and then she goes on a road of that much misinformation. Is this how it's going to be? I hope not, because I got a feeling she got quite a blast from a lot of people. She overcorrected. She's playing the political game. But that also shows we're going to be countering misinformation from everybody on every level all the way through this campaign. And again, that's why it comes down to that one-on-one campaign as to how we have to do this. I mean, I love this modern age. It's more information packed into this thing than an entire encyclopedia set used to have. You know? I mean, as though some of us in here can certainly remember having some beers, you were arguing with somebody about something, and you had to wait a couple days to go to the library, to go to check the encyclopedia and see who was right, and then you wouldn't say anything when you found out you were wrong. Now you just check your bloody phone. It's amazing. But it's also got more BS packed into it than we've ever been exposed to in our lives, too. It's incumbent on us to check multiple sources. You know, this power comes with personal responsibility. That's something a lot of people have issues with. Our responsibility is to keep double-checking these, and because there are so many sneaky ways that unfortunately we're being misled, and by so many people, people have difficulty trusting, and with good reason, political leaders, media members, always mistrusted lawyers. But we need personal discussions then to make those trusted leaps and decisions in something as big as an independence vote. So that's where my speeches tend to focus a lot again on preparing yourself to get out there into the wild and start cultivating those conversations to help move that needle. Because we've seen incredible things this last couple of years, this last few years. We've hit some tipping points. And bad times can lead to future improvements. One of the big tipping points was certainly COVID. That shook a lot of people out of a slumber. That made a whole lot of people who really had thought that they had almost sacred personal rights protected and realized how quickly the government can strip those from you on what seems to be almost a whim. Suddenly you couldn't travel. Suddenly you couldn't go to a funeral. Your kids couldn't go to school. You couldn't keep your business open. Again, the mistruths were flying. People were coerced into vaccinations they weren't comfortable with. What the heck was all this? The convoy came along. The Emergencies Act was declared on a bunch of people with bouncy castles. This was a government in panic and a government that didn't think twice about imposing the Emergencies Act. And we should remember the Emergencies Act, the last time it was imposed was by Trudeau Sr., and it was called the proper name back then, the War Measures Act. Why did they call it that? Because you should really only have something as big or as important as a war before you even think of invoking that. The other term for that is martial law. It means an emergency has become so pressing, so dangerous, harming the public interest so much that you have to suspend your domestic human rights in order to get it under control. That means your nation should be invaded at the time, or aliens should be landing, or at least an earthquake or something has gone on and looting has gone out of control. That's the scope and degree before you invoke something like the Emergencies Act. And in this case, it was a protest of a bunch of truckers led by a tiny little woman with a bouncy castle. And let's face it, I was covering it at the time, I think they overstayed their welcome. I think they should have had an exit plan when they were in Ottawa. You can't have a protest that's going to stay forever. Eventually, the authorities are going to have to move you along, and that is what happened. And I wish it had been negotiated in a better way, but they didn't need the Emergencies Act to do that. They never needed to invoke such a powerful piece of legislation to seize people's bank accounts, to press tow truck drivers into forced labor. That was part of it. I mean, this is beyond the pale. And judges have found that since, and there's the scary part that some people are realizing. They have ruled that the government wasn't justified in invoking those powers. And guess what the consequences have been? Well, the man behind it's prancing around the world on the arm of a pop star. Boy, he's suffering terribly, isn't he? That's it. No consequences. You can violate the rights of this many Canadians and face no consequences. In South Korea, the leader, the prime minister there, wrongly imposed the Emergencies Act there, their form of martial law. He got a life sentence. This is just recently. He could have faced the death penalty. That's how seriously freedom-loving countries take that sort of thing. So a lot of Canadians realized at that time, wow, this isn't quite the place I thought it was. And now nothing has changed. Nothing has been adjusted. As I said, nobody was held responsible. No policies have been changed to prevent this all from happening again. We're one more outbreak away from being locked down again. That's got a lot of people feeling it's time to change the system. The next thing, moving along, getting complacent again, but still, Canada loves the Liberals. That's the way it is. If we look at our history, the vast majority of the time we've been governed, it's been under Liberal governments. I was saying to somebody earlier, there's that old saying about, in a democracy, you get the government you deserve. It's not 100% true. In Canada's democracy, we get the government that Toronto deserves. But it doesn't matter, we still get stuck with it. But once in a while, Canada will give the West a break. Once in a while, they'll say, we'll give it a breather, we'll put some Conservatives in for a term or two to maybe clean things up a little bit, and then we'll put the Liberals back in for another decade. We thought we were there. I mean, really, we had the most embarrassing, incompetent prime minister in Canadian history. He really was. Justin Trudeau outdid himself. We thought Canada's got to be ready. But all they had to do was dig up another Liberal, put a coat of paint on him, throw him up there, and here he is with a majority government today, Mark Carney, preaching the New World Order. That woke a lot of people up. You see, it reminds people that, again, it's not the party in power that matters. It's the system. The system is broken. It doesn't address the regional changes. It doesn't address the regional needs. If we had the regional autonomy we're supposed to have in a federation, we wouldn't care that much that the central part of the nation wants to elect socialists or incompetents, because we can shield ourselves with some degree of regional autonomy from whatever they chose. But we can't, because the federal government overreaches and it goes into everything from our municipal levels of government to our daily lives. So how do we get out of it? And again, people are reaching that conclusion. I can only see one way. The Clarity Act offered a way, not a straight way. That's what we're discovering now too. And we're seeing, just because the Clarity Act was created and it showed a pathway to independence for a province, it doesn't mean the Laurentian authorities aren't going to throw as many roadblocks into that pathway as they possibly can, and we're seeing it. The judges are knocking it down. We're not getting the question. The only thing we can be confident of is they won't stop the whole thing because they're terrified of Quebec. They might not care about Alberta, but if they say it's impossible for a province to leave, the FLQ is going to start operating in Quebec again. So there will always be a bit of a path, but it's not going to be a straight one. It's not going to be an easy one. And we're going to keep hitting roadblocks. But this latest roadblock, shutting down the petitioning, go around it. Go over it. Don't let it stop us. We're Albertans. I spent a lot of time surveying down here when I was in the oil field about 20 years ago. I just about got the dust out of my ears from standing at the tripod in those winds. And I thought about 2 times when I'd work on these prairies in wintertime, with the comforts of a pickup truck running next to me in modern clothing and everything. And I think of the tough devils who broke this land and settled it and created what it is today. And that's that Alberta culture. That was the seeds of it. And that's what's still here now. We're stubborn people who aren't waiting for someone else to do it for us. We're up and doing it for ourselves. And that's still here now. So when we saw that roadblock from the judge, we didn't stop, we didn't roll over, we didn't give up. We're fine. We're going to move ahead. We'll go over it. We'll go around it. We're going to do what we have to. We win what we want to in that upcoming referendum vote, and then move on to the next, whatever we have to do. Painful as it might be, we shouldn't have to fight that hard for a democratic right. But we know we're on the side of right. When you want to figure out and look at a high level on any issue and think of who is right, who is wrong, who is good, who is bad, and it's not always black and white with good and bad. We shouldn't dehumanize people. That's a separate discussion. But look to which side is trying to stop speech, because that's usually the wrong side. Look to which side is trying to take away democratic choice. That's always the wrong side. If you're confident in your case, if you think you're doing the right thing, if you feel you're going to make things better, you should never be afraid to talk about it. You should never be afraid to have somebody challenge you on it. And you should never be afraid to have it go to a democratic vote of all people then. They don't even want us to have the vote. They are wrong. They're wrong. And I'll just kind of leave it at that. You know, I'm looking for the question and answer. Chris is going to have a lot more to say. But getting towards that democratic principle, guys, it is so dear. It's so important. Some people talk even on the independent side of shortcuts. They say Canada's a corporation or this or that, or ways that we could bypass and become independent. Look, I don't want to see independence until and unless more than half of the province accepts it anyways, because I support democracy from either end. It wouldn't be morally right to go if we didn't have more than half of the province ready to go. But we can do that, and there's only one way to measure it, and it will be in a referendum. So let's keep working towards it, guys. We will win it. We will get independent, and I'm looking forward to your questions in a little while. Thank you.
He makes the best cinnamon buns ever. Dude.
That's the best introduction.
The best cinnamons ever.
I don't need this, Max?
Okay, seeing how Cory didn't do it, hi, my name's Chris, and I'm an independence-minded Albertan. Thank you. Thank you all for coming this afternoon. It's nice to see at least most of the chairs filled. You know, we've started to see a little bit less of a turnout to these events. We're kind of we're like 5 years talking about these things, probably hundreds of events by now. People are getting tired, they're exhausted. But that doesn't change the fact that we have a very important question coming up. And it's right around the corner, really. October is not that far away, right? We have a very important question and some subsequent questions that are also somewhat important, but not nearly as important as the standalone question on Alberta sovereignty. I've been saying, ever since this started, that because we're going to be faced with such an important question that has such lasting consequences or potential benefits for us, I believe that it is extremely important that we start talking about these things. I believe that, driving a bus through a banner that says separatist on it, implying that you're just going to run people over with differing opinions, I don't think that's the right path. I don't think that canceling advertisements that people are using to share their opinions on what they believe the best outcome is for Alberta, I don't believe that's appropriate. I don't believe that any of this canceling is appropriate from either side. And the more we get down this road and the more things like this we see and we hear, I'm getting more and more concerned that the conversation we're not having the conversations that we should be having, right? We have the potential for what Alberta could do if we took control of our destiny and did things ourselves, in my opinion, is amazing. Like we have such a huge opportunity here. We have an opportunity to do things that other people have had to fight wars for, sometimes for hundreds of years. All over the world, people have sent their sons and daughters to fight so that they could have the opportunity that you're going to be presented with in October. And I think it's a really important thing. So Cory touched on this a little bit, and he mentioned a few of the things that Alberta could benefit from. In my opinion, there are a multitude of things that Alberta could do better. I believe that by taking control of the things that we don't have control of now, for the first time in history, we could decide what those things look like. For instance, our pension plan, our taxation scheme, what our government looks like. I think we could do a better job. Part of that is because it's always been Alberta that suffers the consequences of these policies, and oftentimes we can't influence or affect the outcome, right? How many people in this room have been frustrated at one time or another after the polls close here in Alberta, finding out that the government has been elected before our ballot boxes are even opened? Most Albertans, that's not a political bias thing. It doesn't matter if you voted NDP or Liberal or Conservative or whatever in the election. As a Western Canadian, as an Albertan, it doesn't matter really what you vote. And that's not to say you shouldn't participate in the process, because I guess there could be some miraculous situation where it is Alberta that's going to swing the vote one way or another by 1 or 2 votes, but that just hasn't happened. As a matter of fact, it's the last 3 elections that I can recall, most of Western Canada has voted all in one way. And the East and the Maritimes, they vote a different way, and what we wanted didn't matter. That's kind of a problem for me. I don't believe that anybody should be forced to live under legislation or laws or policies made by other people who don't suffer the consequences of that legislation. Like when the federal government started passing pieces of legislation that interfered with our industry, interfered with our energy industry, they didn't suffer the consequence of that. They continued to get their tax money from us. They continued to get their piece of the royalty pie, all of those things. It was Albertans that suffered. I mean, going back right to 1905, there's a number of examples of policy that Alberta has not been able to influence or change or end that have kneecapped Western Canada, not just Alberta. And that's not okay for me. So when I see people advocating for the status quo, this morning I saw an article that CBC put out, and it was called Pensions something and misinformation. Like basically, we had some CBC folks come to some Let's Talk Alberta events. They talked to a bunch of people just like you. They interviewed some of us. And then they went to some Forever Canadian events and they asked some questions and they put out the results. And what I read, you know, the really interesting part about it is I really believe that both sides, both camps in this conversation want the same thing. And that is the best outcome for Alberta, the best outcome for us and our families here. I guess there are some who want the status quo because it benefits them and their friends elsewhere, but we're never going to change their mind anyway. But when it comes to the people, like just the average everyday Albertans, we all want the same thing. We want to prosper. We want our families to be safe. We want our roads to not have potholes the size of Honda Civics in them. You know, and rather than focusing on the things that we both want, where we're aligned, we're really divided with an idea about how to get there. And the only way to fix that is if we start talking about some of these issues. One of the things that was mentioned in the CBC article was the cost. It's going to be so expensive. Have to start everything from scratch. I'm thinking, wait a minute, no, that's not true. You have to start some things from scratch, but there's a lot of things we already do, and it's a letterhead change, or maybe a badge on the uniform change. We're not starting from scratch. And I think that's an important conversation, so much so that I actually wrote a blog on that, and we produced a trifold pamphlet with a bunch of that information, basically challenging Premier Smith's assumption that an independent Alberta would cost $400 billion to start. I completely disagree. You know, the people who advocate for the status quo say, well, no, it's going to be so expensive because you're going to have to take your share of the national debt. And so then I'm thinking, okay, well, at what point did Alberta ever really have any say in how the money is spent and how much debt we're accumulating, for starters, right? We couldn't change it if we wanted to. And then I started thinking, okay, well, I think I would rather take the share, whatever share that they say we should take now, because I know that next year it's going to be a bigger number. And there's nothing we can do about it. So then I realized that this is an excellent opportunity to have a conversation with somebody that is concerned about the national debt. Obviously, somebody that says, whoa, Alberta, you're going to have to take your share. They're concerned about that. What are they actually concerned about? How much we're going to have to pay. I want to pay less, so I say we should be independent now instead of next year. Right? These conversations, they're so critically important. And what I've found is that when I'm presented with an opposition to my opinion, my personal opinion, charter-protected opinion, that Alberta independence is necessary and inevitable, the opposition points I get, the challenges that people present me with, are almost always part of the rationale why we must become sovereign, why we must be independent. The landlocked argument. Okay, let's just assume for one moment that your geographical position is the only thing that affects your prosperity. I'm not sure how Switzerland is so prosperous. I'm not sure why Venezuela wasn't prosperous, but let's ignore that for a second. Alberta won't be able to get the resources to Tidewater because we're landlocked, correct? Kind of. But are we landlocked right now? And how successful have we been at negotiating our resources to Tidewater? Very unsuccessful, I would say. Yes, now we have an MOU that was voted down by the Liberal government that tells us that we may, at some point, put shovels in the ground to start a pipeline if all of these other almost insurmountable hurdles happen first. So maybe, whatever. But our geographical location isn't going to change, regardless if we pursue Alberta sovereignty or we stick with the status quo. But knowing how successful we've been in this situation now, I say we need a change. And the change for me is a sovereign Alberta that can negotiate with leverage for the first time in history. The national debt one, I mean, that's one that I kind of started thinking about recently, but there's so many other things to talk about. Our pensions. That's the number one thing that people with white and gray hair are concerned about that's preventing them from reaching out and taking the greatest opportunity Alberta's ever had. And it's not even like it's that great of a thing. Like, how is it that we're scared or concerned, I guess is the better word, to reach out and take control of our future because something might happen to an entitlement, to a stipend, to some breadcrumbs that don't cover our cost of living that we can't survive on. How is that a good trade-off? Well, in an independent Alberta, if you look at the numbers, just off the top of my head, according to that LifeWorks report that our own government commissioned, we overpay by about $3 billion a year. So even if we started from scratch, not even counting the $343 billion that the math says is due to us, if we started from scratch with nothing changing, with a $3 billion surplus, could we not do something for our seniors? Could we not do something for our pensioners? Is there not opportunity there to do something better than we're currently doing? You know, the opportunity is still there. That $3 billion is still a real thing, that overpayment. And of course, someone could argue, well, we can just change the system. We'll just change from within. We'll fix that. We'll make it so that the Canada Pension Plan money that Alberta contributes stays in Alberta. Good luck. Good luck. I'll see you at 8:09 when the election's called as our ballot boxes are going out to be counted. All of these things, all of the concerns people have about what Alberta independence could mean, are legitimate concerns right now. What I'm advocating for is that Albertans take control of these things for the first time. And we decide how they're going to look, how they're going to operate. And then if we've done something wrong, we have the ability to say, hey, you know what? We screwed up here. We need to change this. We need to make this better. We do it ourselves, and we get it done. But we just don't have that opportunity right now. You know, we had a situation where I would say a good portion of Western Canada, actually a good portion of Canada, was absolutely disgusted, if not heartbroken, watching what happened to the ostriches in BC, right? Now, I'm not going to get into, trust the science or look at these things or this is what the paperwork says. What I'm saying is we had a federal organization come in and do something in a province that even the province didn't agree with. There were provincial MLAs standing up against that. There were Western Canadian MLAs writing letters saying, hey, don't do this. The United States got involved. RFK wrote a letter. Dr. Oz said that he would take them, test them, take care of them. And nobody would listen. And there wasn't a damn thing anybody could do about it. We had this idea that if enough of us show up and we just stand firm in our resolve to make sure that things are done justly and properly, that will be respected. No, we won't. No. If the federal government doesn't like what we're doing, they'll just send people in and clear it out. They will buy bulldozers. They will buy tow trucks. They will compel people to come down to Milk River and Coots and do underhanded things. They will use the full weight of the law backed by the inexhaustible trough of taxpayer money that the lawyers can access. And they will wage lawfare on you until you die. If they want to, they can. And there's nothing you can do about it. We could elect every MP in Alberta aligned, saying we want to protect Albertans, protect Albertans' values. We're not going to call them criminals because they refuse to give up their ridiculously small calibered, scary-looking gun. And they'll do it anyway. Danielle Smith says, well, we're not going to enforce it. Okay, great. Don't enforce it. Then you get a letter in the mail saying, you're a criminal. Hand in your passport. And what can you do about it? Nothing. That's not fair. And that's not right. Maybe in 1905, when Albertans were busy breaking the land, breaking their backs, bleeding and dying, building this place, we didn't have time to concern ourselves with managing all of these things. It might have been appropriate. Even though there was no referendum, no plebiscite, we were never asked, there was never Indigenous consultation, any of those things. And by the way, Indigenous groups are saying, because there was no Indigenous consultation in 1905, Alberta doesn't exist. But we've grown up since then. We can do these things ourselves. And actually, speaking of our Indigenous brothers and sisters, I think we can do that better too. I really don't think that the federal government has been the beneficial guardian that they claimed to be. At any given time, there's between 300 and 500 active litigation cases from First Nations against the federal government because they're so unhappy with what's going on. And here we are, as Albertans, we have an opportunity to work on that as well, to welcome our brothers and sisters into, to a seat at the table where we actually decide how these things look going forward. Maybe right some of the wrongs of the past. Maybe fix some of these things that people are unhappy with. We could do that as Albertans, but only if we seize the opportunity. There is only one way, and that's why I say Alberta independence is necessary and inevitable. Albertans are growing up where we don't really fit in the little room under the stairs like Harry Potter that the federal government has kind of stuffed us in anymore. And it's time we self-determined. And when we do that, I believe that we're going to be better neighbors to Saskatchewan and British Columbia, and better neighbors to the Atlantic provinces. Imagine if Alberta was in a position where we made responsible decisions. We built a nice big savings. We pursued human flourishing and prosperity by developing our energy, by developing our agriculture responsibly, the way we know how. And then something happens in Nova Scotia, and they need help. In Alberta, we would have the opportunity to say, hey, you're our neighbors, we'll help you. We can afford to help you. No one needs to compel us to do it. They don't need to take $30 billion from us and then pretend they're benevolent by giving you our money to help you with these things. We can do it because we're good neighbors. Imagine that. Imagine if Alberta was independent and we became the economic powerhouse we could be. And we watched as our Prime Minister told veterans that they were asking for more than we could give. Imagine if Alberta was able to stand up and say, you know what, maybe you're asking Canada for more than they can give, but we respect you and value the service that you gave to build what we had the opportunity to continue, and we'll help you. Imagine that. Right now, we hemorrhage money, a net loss between $17 and $30 billion per year to Ottawa. That is, X amount of dollars goes out, like they collect it, X amount of dollars comes in, and the difference is a net loss of around $17 to $30 billion depending on the year in Alberta. That is a big number. And then the federal government takes some of that and they use it for programs that encourages people to vote for things that are not aligned with our values, that are not conducive to a prosperous Alberta, that don't allow us to generate the economic activity that we need to make that payment. And instead of Alberta being the one that says, hey, we want to help you because you're our neighbors, we're just the embarrassing cousin over there while the federal government stands up like the heroes of Confederation. But who did the work? And who made the sacrifices? And who laid the foundation so that they could do that? It's Alberta. So when I hear people from the East, specifically politicians mostly, but there are some well-paid podcasters and influencers on government payroll who say these things as well, like, Alberta, you're just a bunch of whiners. Stop complaining. You're never going to leave. We won't let you leave. We've heard these things before, right? We've watched as our friends had relationships where one person said things like that to the other, and we didn't stand for it then. Why are we standing for it now? It's 5.5 million people in Alberta, 5.4 million people, who stand to benefit tremendously from the decisions we're going to make in October. And that's why I say that the most important thing that we need to do right now is talk about these things, like adults, instead of juvenile keyboard warriors, which I enjoy doing from time to time.
Me too.
Yeah, Max too. But we have to start doing it. We have to start talking Alberta, specifically with those who don't share our opinions. So I'll close with this. When you come to an event like this and you see that it's not the 1,000 people that it was before, when things were more exciting and people weren't out camping and boating and fishing and those types of things, you need to understand that those of us who know these things and feel these things and we see the future we could have, we have a tremendous responsibility. And that is not to just come to things like this and buy the overpriced merch from beautiful Jessica back there so that I can actually, if we can afford to do these things. It's great overpriced merch, by the way. But you have a responsibility and an obligation, and I would say a moral obligation, to have these conversations with people who are not here. Bring the conversations from here to wherever you go. Be bold. Don't let anyone tell you that it's rude to talk about religion and politics. Politics affects your life from before you're born to after you're dead. And then it mingles in your family's life while they're trying to figure it out, mourning the loss of you. And religion affects everything else in your eternity. The conversations are important. The conversations are necessary. So, let's talk Alberta.
So before getting to the Q&A section, I would like to remind you that there is what's your name again? Darlene? What's that? Trudy. One of our volunteers, Trudy, she has a paper. So if you're not comfortable asking questions with a microphone, you can go to her, and she's going to write it down your question, and we're going to ask you on your behalf. Okay? Very important. Also, this event, and also about the events and social media, what I've seen on the ground is that if you're especially on Facebook, if you post an event on Facebook, sometimes you get into the actual poster a week after. A week after might be another place. So it's imperative for you guys to go to letstalkalberta.com, the Whistle Stop Facebook page, right? Yeah? Yeah, and freedomcanada.net, the website. The events are being put over almost twice a week in there. And it's important for you guys to share the posters as much as you can. One thing that it tends to work best, at least personally speaking, is text messaging. So when you send a poster, you send to a bunch of your friends, send that to people. That is what I think personally works the best. So the point of truth is letstalkalberta.com, the website, the Whistle Stop Cafe, the Facebook page, as well as freedomcanada.net. These are the sources, the points of truth. So we're going to do we're in the intermission mode now. So if you want to grab yourself some coffee, go outside, take a smoke, go to the washroom, whatever. We're gonna go back in about 10 minutes. We're going to go to the Q&A section, and thanks for being here today. Oh, the buckets, too. So we're going to have the bucket. What was that?
One more thing. While you're mingling, grab a couple of those little trifold brochures we've been doing and have a skim over them. See if there's anything you want to talk about, anything that you have questions about. We try and put out those whenever there's something going on that we need to talk about. The idea is that you folks can take those from here to wherever, and you can copy them. You can. We encourage people to take them out to their post office and do a neighborhood mail out. Just send a couple hundred out in your neighborhood and help get the conversation started in other places as well. But don't take the Paradise Valley ones. I have to mail those to Paradise Valley. Thank you.
Yep. Alrighty. I'm gonna put some music there.
10 minutes.
Oh yeah, 10 minutes. Oh yeah. So this is the 2-minute warning. We're going to start soon. Beautiful signs, eh? I got mine signed. Oh, I think you need a permit for that. Screw the permits. Oh, business opportunity right there. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start soon. I want to ask you to get yourself comfortable. If you want to go to the washroom or all those things, feel free to do so now. Also, I can't forget her name. What's her name again? What's her name? Oh, no, that's okay. Trudy, exactly. Thank you. Trudy has the microphone. So if you have any questions, she's going to come to you with a microphone. And I think we're going to first start with the written questions. How many questions do we have? 3 written ones. Okay. And some questions online too. This is going to be very interesting to see what kind of questions we have. Okay? So, yeah, should we go with I think we're going to start with the written questions, guys. Okay? All right. Yeah. I'll do my best. In any case, I'll go back to you. Okay, written question number 1. There is a worry about the United States of America annexing an independent. No. Is there a worry that the United States will annex Alberta as into their territories, basically?
No, I'm not worried at all. That's one of the things that opponents point out quite often. They try to make a fear of an external threat. I mean, part of what we have to look at, what's stopping them now? I mean, we can't pretend that Team Tampon on the Canadian military is what's keeping the American forces from coming up here and taking Alberta if they ever chose to, which I shouldn't knock those serving members. They've just been poorly served by their leadership and bureaucracy. But being serious on it, the will isn't really there on the part of the United States. It didn't help when President Trump keep saying the US 51 thing and jibing at the prime ministers and doing those things. But we used to do, as well from our side of the border, a lot of straw polls when we used to do that traveling with Dennis Modry. And he'd always ask the room, what they'd like to see, say, in an independent Alberta. And even among independent supporters, the amount of people who would like to join the United States is a tiny minority of that. There's not much appetite to be a smaller fish in a bigger pond. But there's also mechanisms in the United States. It's not that easy for the United States to absorb a new state. It's just not in the cards, really. But it's still a fair question because we've heard so much about it. But the risk of it is quite minimal, at least from what I can see. Perhaps, Chris, more to add?
Sure, but before I do, I just want to mention, we brought a bunch of trifolds that need to be folded. So if anyone feels like doing some folding, there's some table space back there, and you're welcome to help fold. And thank you in advance. As for the U.S. thing, Shane explains this better, but there's some terms and conditions in the United States for new states. It has to go through Congress. It's got to go through all sorts of things. And one of the issues is that before any new states are accepted, existing territories have to be negotiated and brought in. And right now, Puerto Rico is one, and they're very heavily Democrat-leaning, and the Republicans don't want them because that's more Democrat votes. The other one that would have to come in is Washington, D.C. Again, very Democrat-leaning. So they don't want that. And then the Democrats certainly don't want Alberta because I'm pretty sure that Alberta would be pretty favorably Republican voting. So not only is the appetite not there, In this day and age, the United States does not roll into a first world country with tanks and say, you're our country now. That just doesn't happen. Albertans don't want it. And even if they did, we'd have to be sovereign first and then have another referendum, which I'm certain would fail. So no, I'm not concerned, and neither are any of the other advocates for Alberta independence.
We're going to the next question then. So this is a question, basically, I think it's for Cory, but I think for Cory that would be good. How do we address the rural/urban differences if we become independent?
I can start on that. Yeah, that's one of the great things. There is a difference. There's a cultural difference. There's a political difference, and that's one of the things that's affecting politics in the developed world all over. That's why we need a new system that has decentralized power and authority. We wouldn't want to take the exact same system that we left Canada with and come into Alberta and then have Edmonton and Calgary dominate all of the rural areas. What we need is a system that allows local representation to allow that sort of individual choice. I like going back all the time, and I write about that in my book, quick plug, it's on the table back there. But the system I like, for example, and there's lots of systems to look at, is Switzerland. I mean, it's a small landlocked country. It's got 26 cantons. These are smaller than any province by a long shot. They have 4 official languages in those, and they all have a massive amount of independence from canton to canton. Some are very socialist, some are very conservative. And guess what? There's no independence movement there because you allow the differences in those different regions. So whatever system we may consider in an independent Alberta, we should very strongly take into consideration having a system that allows for that differences regionally and in areas with higher population and lower, because we aren't the same. And if we don't do that, there will be just more conflict even within our smaller unit of a province. So it's an excellent question, and that's how we can address it. I don't have anything to add.
Next question. How do we address the currency issue? In other words, after Alberta becomes independent, basically what's going to happen with the Canadian dollar, so to speak, or to adopt another currency in that regard?
So the question is about currency. I like to bring this back to another question. So what do we do about that right now? What was Alberta's response when the federal government doubled our money supply and decreased its value over that period of time? You know, when we don't like what the federal government is doing, currency-wise, with monetary policy, what do? Nothing, absolutely nothing. So there's that. The current situation and the status quo, if you're concerned about currency, there's not a thing you can do about it as an Albertan, as a Western Canadian. However, an independent Alberta could decide what is our currency going to look like. If you want my opinion, I would say that when Alberta becomes independent, I don't think the Canadian dollar is going to be stronger. I think it's probably going to be weaker. So I like to think about those things and plan for that. I don't think it would be in Alberta's best interest to use the Canadian dollar because it's managed by people who are fiscally irresponsible. So we have options. The option that I like is we do the same as 28 other countries do, and we immediately start trading in US dollars. Why? Because it's there, it's available, they don't mind if we do it. Most of our trade is with the United States anyway. It opens up world markets, accepted everywhere, easy peasy. However, I believe in sovereignty, so that means that we need our own dollar. So we would have to build a reserve and then launch our Alberta dollar, whatever it is, backed by whatever we wanted, hopefully gold or some precious metal that's stable, and then we would launch it. And for the first time in Canadian history, Albertans would get to decide what their monetary policy is, what their dollar looks like, all those types of things. So this is a two-part thing. The first part is there's nothing we can do about it now, and the second part is we have an opportunity for the first time ever to be the ones who decide these things.
And then there's also a question about the military, people asking in the military as well. One of the theories that was kind of explored is to subcontract the U.S. military for the time being, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's another policy thing. If you don't appreciate what the federal government has done to our military since 1980 or 1975, whatever, what are you going to do about it? Nothing. But in independent Alberta, we could enshrine things that honor and value our service people, right? For the first time in history, we would decide what our military is going to look like, but like Max says, day one, of course, we don't have a military, so what do? Well, you contract it out. Again, United States, our biggest trading partner, best ally, neighbors. Why wouldn't they want us to use their defense? I mean, a strong defended Alberta benefits the United States, right? One of the major issues that Trump had that caused some of this tariff stuff was continental security. He's not happy that other countries aren't securing their borders and doing things that harm his country. So he's retaliating for that. And I think that if when Alberta is the grown-up in the room, and we can finally be the responsible people when it comes to defense, I think that would be a very good relationship and beneficial to both parties. And in turn, a strong Alberta that also benefits Canada, right? Because we're obviously going to be neighbors and allies. And but again, for the first time, we get to decide what that's going to look like.
Interesting point of view. Do we have any written questions, Judy? One question? Another one here? Okay, let me go through this. That's okay. Oh. Amazing job, by the way. I'll say it out, then I'll go to him.
Get it all wrote down.
Okay. Oh, you're ready. Okay.
Well, you may as well just go ahead, Trudy, because you didn't.
So the question is, explain. It's on. No, it's not on. Okay, explain why the charter question is not on the referendum ballot this fall, and why, or is it true that Danielle could have put it on as she has the authority to, or does she not have the authority to do that?
Well, that's debated. So for those that didn't hear it, did Premier Smith have the authority to put the Clarity Act related question on the ballot or not this fall? It's kind of, in my view, I guess a yes and no. She has the authority. She is the one who the government can put anything on a ballot. But the courts have also established that probably within a week there would be an injunction slapped against it. They would use the exact same reason in the court that they used against the petitioner to stop it. Some people believe that wouldn't happen. You get two lawyers, you get two opinions. But we've seen enough judges to know they'd throw the same thing at it. So my view on it is it's going to have to go through an appeals process or something to get that rectified before we could get that question put on without an injunction holding it up. So we've been offered the half a loaf this fall with that weird question that seems to have made everybody upset, but we just gotta work with what we got. At least that's my view on it, and I know some people feel she could have done otherwise. I don't know. You'd have to trust that the courts wouldn't intervene again, and I don't trust the courts a lot.
Before going to the questions, just remind you that she has the microphone. It's important for you guys to talk under the microphone because it's on the stream. If you still want to reciprocate or respond, we'll get the microphone anyways. We're trying to get into the format when everything that comes on this from the audience gets on the microphone. If somebody's asking a question, what you're trying to avoid is somebody asking a question at the very end and yelling the question. We'll get the microphone to you, okay? Thanks.
If you could, I just want to digress on something quickly because it broke and I just saw that during the break in the news. For people who might have been watching, there's been a bit of a dispute in Sundre. It kind of relates a bit to almost the Tabor issue or other things I was talking about. There's an annual rodeo parade in Sundre, and there had been, they'd accepted a Forever Canadian float, but they decided not to allow a float that was covered in Alberta flags, which led to quite a conflict. I guess the rodeo committee, after getting so much blowback on that, decided, okay, fine, we'll allow the Alberta one in, but then the Forever Canadian people went crazy as well, so now they had both sides, and it sounded like it was going to turn into a rumble, so they've canceled the parade altogether. This is, a loss for everybody in Sundre, and the warning, I think, to every committee or council or town or whatever with these things, either allow both sides or allow neither side. Well, when you pick and choose, this is the crap that happens. And this lands on the laps of the rodeo committee. They're trying to blame vitriolic social media people and everybody who got nasty with them, but they poked the hornet's nest and they couldn't put the hornets back in. So it's unfortunate, and it's unfortunate there probably were vitriolic people on both sides with that whole dispute, but now the community is lost on a parade that happened every year. Innisfail had a parade that had floats from both sides in it. It was still weird because Lukasic's won, but either way, there was no riot, there was no giant issues because they allowed both. I just wanted to announce that, and it's also a warning for some of us who are going to be active all the summer. There's a parade in Nanton. I think there's going to be a float in with some of the signs and flags, and one in Clare's homecoming. We can avoid a parade here, avoid a whole lot of that just by being open and allow both sides, and it doesn't become a conflict. Because it's the kids and everybody who got screwed out of this, not anybody else.
You know, my question, who the hell do these people think they are? You know, why do people on these boards think they're gatekeepers of democracy? How dare anybody that serves on a board like that, that's supposed to facilitate these things to the benefit of the people they serve, how dare they pick and choose which opinions can be represented in the public square? This is what I was kind of getting at earlier. And this is a huge problem that we have people like that rodeo committee and like the folks in Tabor that think that it's their responsibility to choose whose voices are heard. That is complete and absolute nonsense, and nobody should stand for that. You know, I don't particularly like some of the people who oppose my opinions. I don't appreciate that they go on social media or the media and lie to you. I don't like that. But I will actually fight for their ability to speak to you. I do not believe that anybody should be canceled like that. And we have to be bold with these conversations as well. And we have to be willing to have the courage to change things when it comes to councils and things like this who think that they're the gatekeepers of democracy. We have to be willing to attend these things and do the work and make sure that both sides of conversations are facilitated. Otherwise, we're not going to get to the best outcome. And we're going to lose parades.
Oh, an online question. Statement. Oh, okay, statement. Okay. The parade marshal for the Milk River Parade says, all welcome, bringing in our candy, right? Bring candy. Okay, in other words, the parade marshal for Milk River, he is open to anybody, basically, right? Okay, fair enough. Oh, just bring candy. Okay, that's good. Okay. Do we have any questions from the audience here? If you have a question, just raise your hand, okay? No? Oh, somebody over there? All right. Let's get ready to rumble.
I'm curious about invitation with Saskatchewan.
Just get closer to the microphone, sir.
You can't hear me? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there any much talk at the meetings at all about joining with Saskatchewan? Or is it? I just want to know what's been the consensus or whatever.
I just came off a tour of Saskatchewan, speaking in Regina, Swift Current, and Saskatoon. There's about as strong a ground appetite for independence in Saskatchewan as there is within Alberta, though they aren't as heavily organized as we are over in Alberta, and they do have to change their legislation to allow for referenda to be effective as well. When you're talking about the discussion of us joining sides, though, we work together, we walk together, we're very close culturally and very close socially, but we each have to go on our own. Saskatchewan has to vote to go on their own. Alberta has to vote to go on their own. After such votes, both can actually, start discussing what sort of relationship they may want to have after that. A lot of people like that concept, but there has been talk with and about Saskatchewan, and it is happening over there, but it's kind of parallel to us rather than overlapping.
Question for you. In 2021, there was a referendum in Alberta, and the position was to discard equalization. And it was about 61% in favor of discard and 38% no. We need to build on that, and it's the same song. Comments?
Yeah, you're correct. So the equalization referendum, Albertans, by a quite the majority said that we are unhappy with the way equalization works. I mean, why would Alberta be happy with the status quo that sees us hemorrhage between $17 to $27 billion a year for which we get nothing back? Here's where I have an issue with our politicians. We did all that work, and we put our hope in Jason Kenney to come in and save us from all of these things. And we've done that for years, for decades in Alberta. We keep believing that someone's going to parachute in, and they're going to do the work, and they're going to fix all these things. But what do we see? Jason Kenney comes in, and he does some things that he said he was going to do that we asked, for instance, the Citizen Initiative Act. Well, the original Citizen Initiative Act made it almost impossible for us to do anything. That's a reality. The hurdles were so high, it was just about impossible. So when I realized what that legislation was, they're doing this promise made, promise kept, hurrah, look at us, we're for the people. And I'm like, wait a minute, you say you did it, but you didn't actually because we can't achieve this. And then we have this referendum and equalization. Yay, we're going to end equalization. Well, no. All it was the Premier asking Albertans if they wanted to pay equalization, with no plan and no solution and no ability to change that. Did you know that there was never a way by which we could change that except by begging the federal government to appeal to the other provinces to have a constitutional amendment to change that? Do you know that? We could have never done it. So Jason Kenney gave us this referendum. We voted to get rid of equalization, and we didn't do it. But it was I believe it was a way to placate the masses and keep a promise without actually doing it. Now we know if we want to do these things, there's really only one way, and that's either we have the leverage to negotiate, and the leverage, in my opinion, is a successful referendum on independence, or we take control of all of our wealth and affairs and sovereignty and become independent. So it's a different way of thinking. We're not waiting for politicians to come and save us from these things anymore. We're realizing that it's always been our job, and we're the ones that have to do the work and make sure it happens.
If we would simply institute our own tax department and not send the funds to Ottawa, case closed.
Absolutely. Quebec is a great example of that, right? We do not collect personal taxes or provincial taxes, personal provincial taxes in Alberta. The federal government does it on our behalf. And then they send us money back in the form of transfers for like health transfers, education transfers, whatever. Sometimes they have strings attached. Sometimes the federal government says, we'll give you $1.5 billion, but you need to give us digital access to all of your citizens' health records. And then we'll give you some money for your health services, right? So if Alberta took control of their taxes, which is the very first thing that any serious premier will do if they say they believe in a sovereign Alberta, step one, collect our taxes because of the golden rule. He who has the gold rules, right?
Yeah. But to expand on that, though, Quebec doesn't collect all the taxes, they just collect the provincial ones. Yeah. In Alberta, we entrust the federal government to collect it all, and then we ask for our portion back. What we can and should do is collect our own provincial portions, keep them here. Likewise with royalties, there's no sense putting them in central Canadian banks. But your federal income tax, your corporate tax, and your GST still will go to Ottawa. That would take constitutional amendment, and that gets back to that same circle we keep coming around into. I know the theory sounds nice that we would collect it all locally, but we can't. That would be getting closer to the point of a unilateral declaration of independence if we suddenly said we won't send any federal dollars out. Hey, I'm not all opposed to that concept. I love the thought. But just talking about the mechanisms of where we're kind of bound, all roads lead to constitutional amendment. That was the same with the equalization thing. We don't pay a check, for example, in equalization. We put all our money into that federal pool, and then they selectively dole it out to the other provinces, and of course they short us, and they overcompensate the others. But we can't stop that outgoing of federal taxes within the Federation.
Thanks for the clarification. One other thing that Quebec does that I find really interesting is they have a whole bureaucracy that sits in Gatineau, just across the river from Parliament, and they look at what all of the money that the federal government takes from Ottawa, and if they take $1,000 and they only send back $990 in services or cash or whatever, they say, hey, where's my $10? We want the services for that. So Quebec actually walks the walk in more ways than most of us realize.
We have to send the agreed federal taxes, but we should not be sending the equalization amount. All it's doing is funding Quebec primarily.
Yes, but we don't send equalization.
No. You can call it a duck or whatever it is, but if it quacks like a duck and swims like a duck and flies like a duck, it's a duck.
I know, but we just put out federal taxes. They redistribute through a number of programs. We can't say we won't pay out for equalization because we don't pay out for equalization. It's your income tax.
Who says we can't? You say we can't. A premier could decide we're going to do that, and that's what is.
No, they can't. But I appreciate the sentiment.
See, here's the jurisdictional problem, right? What happens if you don't pay your federal taxes? They take your stuff, right? Because you don't actually own your stuff. So this is very similar to the conversation about firearms licenses and registration. The premier said, well, don't worry, we just won't enforce the federal gun grab, and it'll be fine. You won't have to give up your guns. Well, then what happens to the citizen who doesn't give up their guns? You become a criminal. You've committed a crime in the federal government's eyes. So there goes your passport. Now they're banging on your door, and you become you're just stuck. And it's the same with federal taxes. We pay that because, that's the law. That's what we pay. But what I have a problem with is the amount of money that leaves Alberta, that Albertans generate, is not nearly the amount of money that comes back in services. And then that money that's kept from your hard work, the value that you create, is used to advocate against Alberta. That's a problem for me, and I think that's what we need to focus on. But I like the way you think.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I'm not defending equalization. It's a vile, sick system of basically interprovincial welfare that's adding to our division, and it's robbing Alberta. But the bottom line is we're basically cutting a blank check to them, and equalization is one of the ways that they screw us when they redistribute it. But we don't get to pick and choose how much of our taxes go outwards or in which ways. It's the federal tax goes out, the federal tax goes out. You can't just have the premier say we're just going to stop sending federal tax. It doesn't work that way. That's talking about a unilateral declaration of independence then, and that's, well, we're different, yeah.
Mike has a question? Okay.
Hi. Whenever I talk to anybody about independence and, the pros and the cons, the one con that I get, if you want to call it a con, is people will say to me, do you know how much work that's going to be? This isn't going to be instant. It's going to take 10 years to settle all of this. And why should we do that? We can just stay in Canada. And so, I don't know. It's not really a question, but can you speak to that?
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of work. And, that's where I think that case doesn't resonate well with a lot of Albertans. It's a bit of what I was talking about before, where I won't sugarcoat some of the challenges that'll become independent, because we're not afraid of those challenges coming. It's going to take some sacrifice. It's going to take some work. It's going to take recreating some of the institutions that exist, everything from, provincial prisons to having our own border systems. But the thing that people, when they play the whataboutism game with you in that debate, something I was talking with another gentleman about, which I didn't cover when I was talking with others. When you identify one of the people who's never going to support independence, you know them when you hear them. Don't waste any more breath on them. At least not on this debate. They could be friends, they could be coworkers. Talk about sports, talk about the weather, whatever. Don't bother with trying to make the case when you're not going to win it. And if they're actually leading you down the garden path of whataboutisms, they can exhaust you, because every answer you give them, they'll come up with another one. These things can all be recreated. There are hundreds of countries around the world with their own currencies, their own borders, their own police, their own prisons, their own judiciaries. They got to quit pretending that Alberta wanting to form its own would be the first country in the history of mankind to have done so. But when a person is legitimately asking those things, then we can respectfully, start talking about that, like saying it's not unprecedented. But if it's somebody just being a pain in the butt, get them onto soap operas or something. There's not much sense talking about anything further.
Does anybody know what day Freedom Day is in Alberta right now? And do you know what I'm talking about? Tax freedom? Yep. It's in July.
July the 1st?
So let's talk about work. Let's talk about hard work. We work very hard as Albertans, right? The vast majority of Albertans, we work. We actually enjoy working. Building the West was hard work. Now, we're at a point where we work until July to pay tax before we are free to buy things for ourselves. If it's split into 2 sections and you pay your tax first, you work until July. That is a lot of work. I want to change that. I want an Alberta where our bureaucracy is small. I think we should fire half our bureaucrats, and we could do it. Absolutely we could. I think we should have small government. We should pay them more, though, because I want them to do a better job, and I don't want them to be making backroom deals so that when they're not government anymore, they're making money. But the amount of work it would take to create a new Alberta, Cory is right, it's going to be a lot of work, but who's going to do that work? Well,
Us.
some of it, yes, but really not very many of us. Yeah, we'll have to participate in processes, we'll have to have elections, those types of things, but the really heavy lifting is being done by people who are very, very committed to this. I have a friend who actually got rid of most of his law practice to work full-time, like 40 hours a week on preparing for an independent Alberta. That's all he does now. He assembled a team of 50 or 55 people, and they're going through all of the things that Alberta would need to do to become independent, or once they're independent, and they're putting together a set of white papers to hand to the government to say, these are the things you need to do. This work is being done. And there's a lot of people, like Cory and me and my lawyer friend, who are more than willing to do this work because we see how amazing the reward is. The juice is worth the squeeze. But for the average person, what does it mean? Day one of an independent Alberta, what do? You get up, you go to work. Maybe you pay less taxes, maybe you don't right away. You come home, you go to the grocery store, you buy yourself a nice fat steak while everyone else is eating bugs, and you enjoy your life. Maybe you go, I hope you go to another, a CA meeting, and you participate in processes, and you participate in constitutional convention, and you vote, and all those things, but the heavy lifting work isn't going to be done specifically by people like us. It's going to be done by people who are, this is what they do. And it's our job just to watch what they're doing. So when people say it's going to be so much work, okay, great, how much work are you going to do? It's not going to be much more than normal. But the benefits for 5.5 million people are large.
So one question, there's a rumor going around that Canada Day is actually being canceled by the federal government this year. And I'm like, that sounds really out there. Is that the case? Something about they're not putting funding out for Canada Day celebrations anymore, and that it's, yeah, that's what I thought.
I don't know. I mean, a rumor that Canada is not funding Canada Day functions anymore. I haven't heard that one. It could be an extension, though, of things that we have seen as a trend that, I've talked about before, with this lack of national pride that came from the central government and came from, these land acknowledgements where we're always supposed to stare at our shoes and apologize for something that might have happened 200 years ago. And, we're supposed to keep calling ourselves colonialists and genocidal assholes. And then they're shocked when an independence movement springs up because people don't feel faith in the country that tore down Sir John A. Macdonald's statue. In Calgary, they canceled the fireworks at Canada Day. So there were efforts from activists to try and really undercut that national unity. And I guess as an independent supporter, I should thank them for it, but it's a pretty underhanded way to do it. But either way, leading to now, I haven't seen any evidence of Canada Day type of celebrations being defunded or cut. To be honest, I got a feeling they're going to pump more money into them this year to try and counter some of the things that are happening with the independence movement. But it's a good time to consider what might be happening on July 1st up in Mirror you might want to mention.
Oh, yeah. I almost forgot about that, Cory. Thank you. So at the back, there's some little blue pieces of paper with information about what we're doing over the July long weekend at the Whistle Stop Cafe in Mirror. We've always had July 1st celebrations. I had a 20-foot by 40-foot Canadian flag that I put on my picker after I got back from Ottawa. I had maple leafs all over everything when I went out there and when I came back, and they called me a racist for flying that flag. They said that I was a terrorist and a white supremacist for flying the flag. And that really It kind of hurt a little bit. And I decided, well, what are we going to do? Thought, well, that's a really good long weekend. And sure, it's Canada Day, people can celebrate whatever, but we're doing Albertans Day. It's Albertans getting together at the Whistle Stop Cafe and celebrating being Albertans. And yes, people will have Canadian flags there. I'll put some up as well because I don't hate the country, I don't hate the flag, anything like that. But this is Albertans getting together and spending some time. So we have free camping, we got barbecue stuff going on, we got music, we got, I think Shane's up to like 60 different vendor booths. It's going to be a pretty big thing. So if you're looking for something to do July 1st long weekend, head up to the Whistle Stop Cafe, bring your camper, bring your tent. I got lots of room for lots of people, and we're going to have a grand old time. And we're going to be thankful that we live in a place like Canada where we can do these things and we can gather for political expression and to advocate our opinions without being persecuted too much by the government. So yeah, it's a blessing to be able to do that, and I hope you join us.
And that will be streamed as well too. That will be live streamed as well. So if you want to say hello, feel free to do so. Does anyone here has any more questions here? You can raise your hand. Oh, ma'am over there. We also have some online questions as well. We're going to take it after that. So just going to. Yeah, you just go after him. We'll go from there. We'll get the microphone. Boom, 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 boom.
I should have brought this up when Trudy was closer so she didn't have to run around so much. With the recent huge immigration to Alberta, a great deal of whom are from Ontario or Far Eastern countries, are you sure that you would be able to get enough people that are actual Albertans who've been here for a long time? Like in my family, it goes back to the 1880s, who were those early pioneers who fought so hard to make this the independent area that it is. What's going to happen when that referendum comes up with these recent immigrants and their opinions? Because I know most people in Ontario are automatically going to vote whatever the Liberals want them to.
Well, there's two sides of this. The first thing is, I believe that probably the majority of people that move to Alberta, they move here because they want to be Albertan. They like what Alberta stands for. And of course, we don't all share the same values, but I don't think you need to have 6 or 7 generations in your family as Albertans to be an Albertan. I've only been here since 2000, late 2000. So I wasn't born in Alberta. But when I moved here because I loved what Alberta was. I loved that I could move here, go to work on a rig, work hard, make good money, and prosper. That's why I'm here. And a lot of people immigrated to Canada and came to Alberta because of that. One of the group of people that I find is the most fired up about the mass immigration, the mass migration that Canada has experienced over the last 20 years are new Canadians, because they've left everything in their country. They've made sacrifices to come here for the opportunity. Oftentimes they come here with nothing. And they build something and they work hard and they prosper. Kind of the Canadian dream, the Albertan dream. And they're watching it crumble before their eyes. Because they also have to go sit in an ER for 8 hours without getting service. They also have to watch their families dying in emergency rooms here because they can't get service. Their children go to school with kids who can't be controlled, don't speak the language, and can't integrate and disrupt the classes. So first generation Canadian Albertans are also very independence-minded because they can see the problems as well. So I'm not concerned that new Canadians are going to be voting, new Albertans are going to be voting in the referendum. I just believe that we need to get this conversation everywhere and get the facts out to people so that they can make the best choice for themselves and their family come October.
Yeah, and I'll just add a bit. Like, if you look at the demographics of Alberta, it's always been a frontier. It's always been a place that people moved to in this last 100 and some years to make a future for themselves. So our population's always had a steady rise. 50% of Albertans were not born in Alberta. They either came from other provinces or other countries. Some of our best Albertans came from other countries and other provinces. Rachel Notley was born in Alberta. So we can't make assumptions necessarily by where a person came from. But part of it too, why, because people talked about this 20 years ago when I was leading the Alberta Independence Party then. Why haven't we turned Liberal because of this influx? Why hasn't it happened? But that's because you got to remember, as Chris kind of was alluding to, the type of person who's going to take the chance to pick up and leave their home province, their comfort zone, their family, what they're familiar with, or if it's a country, even more of a leap. That's not a Liberal. That's a person with ambition. A Liberal sits on their ass and asks for the money to come to them. So the type of person who comes to Alberta who would say, I'm going to cross the country just to vote against the prosperity of another province, they don't have that much ambition in them. They're not leaving the basement. So the difference we're seeing in the demographic shift, that kind of ties back to something somebody was talking about before. That's the change between the urban and rural mindsets, and that's happening everywhere. Whereas we're getting smaller rural populations with different cultural values and larger urban ones, and that's in every province, every country in the developed world that's happening right now, and they have different political views. So that's something to be concerned about, because that balance is changing, and then you end up with more of that woke progressive stuff that ends up festering in cities. But I think the influx of people themselves isn't the issue. Part of it too, though, is, and it's a bigger issue that's hitting the whole country, though, and that's mass immigration. Immigration's been good for us. Uncontrolled mass immigration without vetting who's coming and how many has been a problem for everybody, as Chris said as well, for a heck of a lot of new Canadians who already came and followed the rules and tried to get ahead. We really have to correct that, and that could impact our independence abilities, but it's also impacting the entire country. And the damage that's doing in a sick and ironic way, though, is I think helping spawn some of the sentiment with people realizing we can't save the whole country, but we can save this part.
Does anybody here has any questions here? You can raise your hand. Yes, no, yes. Oh, I saw a hand. No? I think so. Oh, over there. Gentleman over there with the mic, with the ear cups over there.
Hey, is the idea of a special general meeting for a leadership review pretty popular? Or is it just kind of a offhand comment?
Well, it's not popular with me. I don't think it's a great idea. I think it's taking away time, energy, and resources from what we should be really doing, which is focusing on the conversation around the question we have. We're not going to change the question at this point. And, I think that a lot of this has to do with political ambitions, and I just don't see any purpose to that right now. Now, that's not to say that somebody couldn't change my mind. I just haven't been presented for a case that actually supports that pursuit. For me, the conversation about this topic, about the question we're going to answer in October, that is the most important thing. After that, then we're going to really see where we need to be politically, because once Alberta has spoken, once the will of the people is manifested through a referendum outcome, then we see how the politicians respond. And at that time, we decide what we need to do. But it appears that something needs to change, for sure, but maybe now is not the right time.
Yeah, and I'll kind of echo a bit of what Chris is saying on it. I like to look at everything as a cost-benefit sort of measure when you look at what you're going to do. And I'm not particularly thrilled with some of the things Premier Smith's done lately. I've written columns stating as much and gotten the crabby emails from the Premier's office to reflect it. But we can only do so much, and we're talking cost-benefit, and I run down the line of what would have to happen if somebody wanted to unseat the Premier prematurely, like with Jason Kenney. It would take a lot of ground organization. It would take getting 22 constituency associations to demand a special general meeting. Then you've got to galvanize tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people to buy memberships and vote to remove her from power, which the earliest that could happen would be late August. And then you got to start a new leadership race, and we don't even know who would necessarily replace her at that point. So do we end up with anything better than where we were? And we've just expended a massive amount of political energy and time while a referendum question came and went. So I'm just thinking, my view is just, I can understand why people are frustrated with the status quo and the provincial government, but we've got to prioritize, And that one, I think, has got to go on the back burner until, as Chris said, after October 19th. October 20th, start reevaluating.
One of the questions that people asking online is about about that specific question is why is that, or why you think that the date, meaning October 19, cannot be advanced to an earlier date? Why it has to be October 19? That's probably a court decision, right?
The reason it was set there was, I think, mostly a political decision. Mid-October is always an ideal voting time. Most of the harvest is finished. The crazy winter hasn't hit yet. That's why most elections tend to land in that period in North America too. Also, there's going to be a general election within a year of then. And I don't think they want to deal with two such events in less than 365 days. You go any later in October, you're going deeper into winter, which comes with other challenges. And if it does turn into a crazy fiasco or have outcomes that they don't want, or if it really harms the government's popularity, they want 12 months to try and recover from it. So I mean, I'm just talking about the political view, whether it's right or wrong, but I can see their perspective. So that's, I think, why they set that. They found it the ideal time to hit and get all of these questions finished with, and we'll see what happens after that.
Does anyone hear any more questions? Oh, go ahead.
There, if I could get Jessica to maybe just skim through the comments on the back there and letting me know if there's anything in there, that would be good too.
Boom, 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 boom.
Click on the comments tab on the right-hand side.
I don't have any questions on my feed, at least. I had.
Well, if you folks don't have any more questions, that might be a wrap. And if there's something that you want to talk about afterwards, we usually stick around for a little bit. We're happy to have conversations with you. But that is what we're advocating for here with Let's Talk Alberta. We have our opinions on what we want to see for a future for Alberta. We certainly have our opinions on what we believe is the best outcome for the upcoming referendum. But at the end of the day, Let's Talk Alberta isn't about telling you what you should do or what you should vote for. We want to share our opinions with you, allow you to challenge those opinions, and come to some sort of a conclusion amongst ourselves. That's the idea here. And we want to encourage you to bring that idea with you when you leave here, and not be scared to have the conversations that need to be had with your friends and neighbors, because they're going to vote too. And if they say that they're not going to, you probably have to have a conversation with them about that as well, because let's face it, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. Like, just the fact that we get even a question that's even remotely to do with sovereignty it's not only progress, but it is a huge blessing. Just if you know anything about history, think about what other people have had to do to get the opportunity that you're going to get in October. And remember that and act accordingly. I say we all need to do a little bit more work than usual, and really make sure that we don't squander this opportunity. And if we do this and we have the conversations and we do it in good faith, whatever the outcome is in October is going to be a good one. But it's up to us to make sure it happens. So if there's no questions from the other stream.
Oh, no, that's okay. Will you say something?
Can I conclude once you're done?
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. Also, want to thank, raise your hands here if you have family or friends in Claresholm. Yeah, raise your hand here. Claresholm.
Does anybody have friends or family in Claresholm?
Yes or no? Anyhow, they will be on Wednesday. That will be at the Claresholm Community Center at 5:30, so you can have some pierogies down there at 5:30. You can watch them as well too.
Well, it is now.
Yeah. And I don't know who's going to be there though, but they will be there. And tomorrow I will be Chris will be in Balzac, so am I going to stream there? And I think they have another event in Alex tomorrow, right? Central Alberta, by Red Deer area, Lacombe County, that kind of stuff. But if you're in the area, Southern Alberta, the next event will be on Wednesday at 5:30. That's when it will open, but the meeting's going to start at 7 p.m. Okay.
All right. Well, I'll just say thank you to the volunteers. Thank you, folks, for coming, and I'll close.
Okay, I just want to really thank Chris, Cory, and Max here for coming down. It was extremely short notice, and a lot of people come together to put this together, and they traveled a long way to come here to give us a perspective and a good way of moving forward for this very difficult decision that's coming up. So let's thank them very much. And
Oh, let me ask you this. I think we should finish this with prayer, okay? Yes? Oh, okay. So, Heavenly Father, we just want to thank you for your presence tonight. Thanks you for the blessing and the opportunity to be in here today in safety. Bless the speakers, bless the volunteers, and bless everybody who is even not here, and probably the other side. I mean, the other guys who are on the Forever Canadian side, who are probably would need some understanding. I just pray that you will protect them as well too, and also for the other guys who are also in Cremona today, who couldn't work the separate team, who are in Cremona as well. Protect them as well, bless their finances, and we pray you for safety and blessing in Jesus' mighty name and Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you, guys. And this live stream has been done through Starlink, just FYI. Starlink for the win. All right, so thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow in Balzac, and that will be amazing to see you guys. So